We were quite at odds with the Bush administration and their supporters, and now we have a new president. And I want to say, what were your hopes for the new administration, and what is your opinion of the stances they're taking right now as regards to the military and the war and anything else you might want to say?
Well, first of all, I had no hopes for the Obama administration. I knew he was just another politician, another corporatist. He exhibited that over and over again as he, while he was a senator. He exhibited it while he was a candidate. He actually promised that he would send more troops to Afghanistan. So I don't understand why anybody in the so-called anti-war movement supported him. And then, having no hopes, I feel almost like, which is a horrible thing to say, I feel almost vindicated by saying that he's not the peace candidate. He's not an agent of change. As a matter of fact, he's more of the same. He's like the third Bush term as far as foreign policy goes. But then if I look at other things, like he promised that he was going to end Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And he hasn't done that. And I just heard yesterday that they were going to do that when the time was right, whenever that means. Healthcare, this whole healthcare drama has been just ridiculous. So my evaluation of him so far is he's not a good leader. He's not a strong leader. He is a corporatist. He's a militarist. He doesn't listen to the voice of people. He's not a change agent. And that now I know more than ever that we need to create a massive movement of people committed for true change if we want to get any change.
It's like, well, I wanted to ask you about this so-called left. When you started to get a lot of attention, you had some detractors. I mean, not only on the right, that was normal, but
right.
People on the left are saying, "Oh, she's getting too much attention," or whatever. Some people on the left or the anti-war movement, whatever you want to call them, seem to turn against you. Why do you think that? What do you think was going on there?
Well, I didn't think that really anybody turned against me in the anti-war movement, in the so-called left, until I started equating Democrats with Republicans. We elected Democrats in 2006, that nothing came of it, no positive change came of it. As a matter of fact, they funded George Bush's wars fully. They refused to hold him or anybody in his administration accountable. Nancy Pelosi gave George Bush the FISA Modernization Act, gave George Bush and the bankers a $750 billion bailout. So, but when I left the Democratic Party in May of 2007, because of the funding bill, they gave George Bush another $125 billion for the war. I left the Democratic Party, and that's when I started to be attacked by the left. But it wasn't really the left, it was Democrats. And what really upsets me is that many of these movements that I helped and these organizations that I helped before that, when I went to run against Nancy Pelosi, they wouldn't support me. And they wouldn't support me, but they would support Obama. And I was like, but Obama is promising to send more troops to Afghanistan. He's promising to continue the drone bombing in Pakistan. No options off the table for Iran. I said, why are you supporting somebody who's a warmonger? And then they would tell me because he's better than McCain. Well, I can't for the life of me think of anything McCain would be doing differently at this point in the administration. And so what gets me is yesterday we were out in front of the White House protesting Afghanistan, and the same people who supported Obama were there. And one of them even got asked, well, but why are you out here protesting? Isn't this what Obama promised?
Yes, so what about running against Nancy Pelosi?
What about it? That's kind of a broad
What was it
question.
like getting your feet
Yes.
wet in national politics?
Well, you know, I ran against Nancy Pelosi for her seat in 2008, primarily because she took impeachment off the table. And, you know, other things, of course, the war funding, her saying that she's against the war, but not doing anything about being against the war. After I decided to run against her, we found out that she had been fully briefed on torture back in like 2002, and she didn't use her power, she didn't use her voice to stop it. And even though she said that she took an oath of secrecy, I believe her oath to the Constitution and her membership in humanity supersedes an oath to secrecy if our government's going to torture and kill, oppress innocent people. So anyway, you know, I thought if I ran against Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, in her district, as somebody running even farther to the left than she's supposedly supposed to be, that we would be able to talk about issues, that we would turn the 2008 elections into issue-based instead of personality-based. I wasn't really fully prepared for the total lack of media coverage, though, for my campaign. No national coverage at all, very little local coverage unless the San Francisco Chronicle was saying something about how I had no chance, and you know how you know they marginalized my campaign all the time. Even though I got the endorsement of two alternative papers in San Francisco, the lack of you know mainstream media coverage was, to me, it sort of surprised me. I thought that there would be more coverage, but it really tells me that the media, it's not left or right. Our corporate media is not left or right, it's corporate. And it exists to support the status quo. And you'll notice that in Crawford, when I was like in 2005 when I first went there, you know, when it was new, the media covered me. But when the media figured out that I really knew what I was saying and I meant what I was saying, and that what I was saying might challenge the status quo, that's when the media turned on me and started to marginalize me about, you know, she's a grieving mother, because she's a grieving mother, she's a grieving mother, she's a grieving mother. George Soros must be supporting her. Michael Moore must be supporting her. So people can identify with a grieving mother, but I think it was harder to identify with a grieving mother who's also intelligent, who also has a grasp of the issues, who's also articulate and can reach masses. You know, if somebody who's articulate, somebody who's from the masses, that's very dangerous, because then we're able to reach people. And so that's why my campaign was marginalized, because we actually had a very progressive platform. We actually had it was a very dedicated and committed campaign. If it had been something like, maybe I was like crazy, I don't want to say this, but maybe, you know, I was out there like Kinky Friedman or whatever, they might have done it so they could say, you know, here she's crazy, you know, she's just crazy, she thinks she's going to take on the Speaker of the House. But, you know, with the dedication and support we had, we might have actually had a chance if we had the same access to the media that Nancy Pelosi has. You know, I think that I might have made a mistake running against her, because it cost so much resources and it cost so much time and energy. You know, it was very stressful, but I'm glad I did it, because I learned more in 2 years running against Nancy Pelosi than I ever would have learned getting a PhD in political science. So I'm really glad I had the experience. Now I can talk about it. Now I can tell people about how our electoral system fails us. And it's not about two parties, and not about Democrats or Republicans, because in the federal, you know, arena, they're the same.